personally annihilated.
How did you decide to come forward?
Ultimately, because reporters were sitting outside of my home and trying to talk to my dog through the window to calm the dog down. And a reporter appeared in my graduate classroom, and I mistook her for a student. And she came up to ask me a question, and I thought that she was a student, and it turned out that she was a reporter. So at that point, I felt like enough was enough. People were calling my colleagues at Stanford and leaving messages on their voicemails and on their email saying that they knew my name. Clearly, people knew my address because they were out in front of my house. And it just, the mounting pressure, it seemed like it was time to just say what I needed to say.
I'm sorry. I want to ask you one question about the attack itself. You are very clear about the attack, being pushed into the room. You say you don't know quite by whom, but that it was Brett Kavanaugh that covered your mouth to prevent you from screaming, and then you escaped. How are you so sure that it was he?
The same way that I'm sure that I'm talking to you right now. It's just basic memory functions, and also just the level of norepinephrine and epinephrine in the brain that sort of, as you know, encodes, that neurotransmitter encodes memories into the hippocampus, and so the trauma-related experience then is kind of locked there, whereas other details kind of drift.
So what you are telling us is this could not be a case of mistaken identity?
Absolutely not.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Mitchell for Senator Hatch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When we were stopped, you were going to tell us a third correction that you wanted to make on that statement, or I'm sorry, the letter to Senator Feinstein.
It wasn't a correction, but I just wanted to comment on it since we were looking at this letter, that I did see Mark Judge once at the Potomac Village Safeway after the time of the attack. And it would be helpful with anyone's resources to figure out when he worked there. If people are wanting more details from me about when the attack occurred, if we could find out when he worked there, then I could provide a more detailed timeline as to when the attack occurred.
Okay, and that is not a correction in your statement.
It's just no.
Okay. You also wrote out a handwritten statement for the polygrapher when you took your polygraph test. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And I see corrections on that where you crossed out. So I will go on to the Washington Post article that was originally published on September 16th of this year.
And should I just not look at this for accuracy, or we're just going to leave that be?
We may come back to it if you need to refer to it.
Okay.
On the Washington Post article, did you submit to an interview by a reporter with the Washington Post for that article to be written?
Correct.
Okay. And then finally was the statement that you provided this morning. I assume that to the best of your recollection that was accurate.
That this whole article is accurate?
No. The statement that you made this morning.
Yes.
Okay. I want to talk to you about the day that this happened leading up to the gathering.
Okay.
In your statement this morning, have you told us everything that you remember about the day leading up to that?
Yes.
Let me ask just a few questions to make sure that you've thought of everything, okay? You indicated that you were at the country club swimming that day?
That's my best estimate of how this could have happened.
Okay. And when you say best estimate, is that based on the fact that you said you went there pretty much every day?
Mm-hmm.
Is that a yes?
Yes.
Okay. Do you recall prior to getting there? So I'm only talking about up to the gathering.
Okay.
Had you had anything to drink?
Not at all.
Were you on any sort of medication?
None.
Okay. Do you recall knowing before you went who was going to be at that gathering?
I recall that expecting that Mark Judge and Leland would be at that gathering.
Okay. Do you recall an expectation that Brett Kavanaugh would be there?
I don't recall whether or not I expected that.
Okay. Now, let's talk about the gathering up from the time you arrived till when you went up the stairs, just that period of time, okay? What was the atmosphere like at the gathering?
Mr. Kavanaugh and Mr. Judge were extremely inebriated. They had clearly been drinking prior, and the other people at the party were not. The living
Can
room
I
was.
ask you just to follow up on that? When you said it was clear that they had been drinking prior, do you mean prior to the time you had gotten there or prior to the time they had arrived?
Prior to the time that they arrived. I don't recall who arrived first, though, whether it was me or them.
Okay, please continue.
Okay. So I recall that I can sketch a floor plan. I recall that it was a sparsely furnished, fairly modest living room. And it was not really a party, like the news has made it sound. It was not. It was just a gathering that I assumed was going to lead to a party later on that those boys would attend, because they tended to have parties later at night than I was allowed to stay out. So it was kind of a pre-gathering.
Was it loud?
No, not in the living room.
Besides the music that you've described that was playing in the bedroom, was there any other music or television or anything like that that was adding?
No,
Okay, so there wasn't a stereo playing downstairs?
no.
Okay.
Senator Leahy.
Dr. Ford, thank you for being here. Mr. Chairman, you know, the way to make this inquiry truly credible is to do what we've always done when new information about a nominee comes to light. To use your words this morning, you want to reach the truth. The easy way to do that, ask the FBI to investigate. This is what we've always done. Let them investigate, report back to us. The same applies to the serious allegations made by Deborah Ramirez and Julie Swetnick. Let's have a nonpartisan professional investigation, and then take the time to have these witnesses testify. Chairman, you and I were both here 27 years ago. At that time, the Senate failed Anita Hill. I said I believed her, but I'm concerned that we're doing a lot less for these three women today. That's my personal view. Now, Dr. Ford, no matter what happens with this hearing today, no matter what happens with this nomination, I know, and I hear from so many in my own state of Vermont, there are millions of victims and survivors out there who've been inspired by your courage. I am. Bravery is contagious. Indeed, that's the driving force behind the Me Too movement. And you sharing your story is going to have a lasting, positive impact on so many survivors in our country. And we owe you a debt of gratitude for that, Doctor. Now, some senators have suggested you were simply mixed up about who assaulted you. An ally of Judge Kavanaugh in the White House even promoted a wild theory about a Kavanaugh lookalike. You immediately rejected that theory, as did the innocent man who had been called that lookalike. In fact, he sent a letter to this committee forcefully rejecting this absurd theory, and I ask consent to enter that in the record. Now, how did you know Brett Kavanaugh and Mark Judge? And is it possible that you would mix them up with somebody else?
No, it is not. And the person that was blamed for the incident is actually the person who introduced me to them originally. So he was a member of Columbia Country Club, and I don't want to talk about him because I think it's unfair, but he is the person that introduced me to them.
But you you would not mix up somebody else with Brett Kavanaugh, is that correct?
Correct.
Or Mark Judge?
Correct.
Well, then let's go back to the incident. What is the strongest memory you have? The strongest memory of the incident, something that you cannot forget. Take whatever time you need.
Indelible in the hippocampus is the laughter, the uproarious laughter between the two, and they're having fun at my expense.
You've never forgotten that laughter. You've never forgotten them laughing at you.
They were laughing with each other.
And you were the object of the laughter.
I was, underneath one of them while the two laughed. Two friends having a really good time with one another.
Let me enter into the record a statement by the National Task Force to End Domestic Violence.
Without objection, so ordered.
And a letter from 24 members of the House of Representatives urging the committee to use the NTF's trauma-informed approach in questioning Dr. Ford. And a letter from another 116 members of the House asking to delay until all this has been heard.
Without objection, so ordered.
And Dr. Ford has at times been criticized for what she doesn't remember from 36 years ago. But we have numerous experts, including a study by the U.S. Army Military Police School Behavior Sciences Education, that lapses of memory are wholly consistent with severe trauma and stress of assault. I'd ask consent that be entered.
Without objection, so ordered.
And Dr. Ford, I just conclude with this. You do remember what happened, do you not?
Very much so.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Now, Ms. Mitchell for Senator Graham, and then it's my understanding that that's where you'd like to take a break.
Does that work for you? Does that work for you as well?
We're here to accommodate you, not to
thank you.
accommodate us.
I'm used to being collegial. So.
Okay, go ahead. Ms. Mitchell for Senator Graham.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You told Senator Feinstein in your letter that you and 4 others were present. You've corrected that today to say it was at least 4 others. When you were interviewed by the Washington Post, you said that there were 4 boys present at the party. And then in your polygraph statement, you say there were 4 boys and 2 girls. When you say 2 girls, was that you and another, or was that 2 other girls?
That was me and one other girl.
And that other girl's name?
Leland.
Leland Kaiser now?
Correct.
Okay. So then would it be fair to say at least PJ, Brett Kavanaugh, Mark Judge, Leland Ingram at the time, and yourself were present, and possibly others?
And one other boy. So there were 4 boys. I just don't know the name of the other boy. So.
Have you been contacted by anybody saying, hey, I was at that party too?
No, I haven't talked with anyone from that party.
Okay. Now, you've been detailed about what happened once you got up the stairs, and so I don't need to go through that again. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I just realized that I said something that was inaccurate. I said I hadn't spoken with anyone from the party since that. I've spoken with Leland.
Okay. Thank you for correcting that. I
thank you.
appreciate that. You've gone into detail about what happened once you went up the stairs, so I don't feel like it's necessary to go over those things again.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Have you told us everything that you do remember about it?
I believe so, but if there are other questions, I can attempt to answer them.
Okay. You said that the music was solely coming from that room, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And it was turned up once the 3 of you were inside that room, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. At some point, do you recall it being turned down?
I don't remember if it was turned down once I was leaving the house. I don't remember.
Okay.
Likely, since I could hear them walking down the stairs very clearly from the bathroom.
Okay. And the bathroom
Sure.
door was closed when you heard this, is that correct?
I could hear them very clearly hitting the walls,
Okay.
going down the stairwell.
In fact, in your letter, you said that they went down the stairs and they were talking with other people in the house.
Correct.
Were you able to hear that conversation?
I was not able to hear that conversation, but I was aware that they were downstairs and that I would have to walk past them to get out of the house.
Okay. Now, let me make sure we're on the same page. Were you not able to hear the conversation or not able to understand the conversation?
I couldn't hear the conversation. I was upstairs.
Okay. How do you know there was a conversation?
I'm just assuming since it was a social gathering, people were talking. I don't know.
Okay.
I
In your
could hear
letter,
them talking as they went down the stairwell. They were laughing and
okay. In your letter, you wrote both loudly stumbled down the stairwell, at which point other persons at the house were talking with them. Does that ring a bell?
yes, I had to walk past everyone to leave the house. So
Okay.
I'm
Your
I'm
letter,
not understanding. I'm sorry.
okay. Your next sentence, let me try to clarify this. After you said other persons at the house were talking with them, the letter goes on with the very next sentence. I exited the bathroom, ran outside of the house, and went home.
Correct.
Okay. You said that you do not remember how you got home. Is that correct?
I do not remember,
Okay.
other than I did not drive home.
Okay. I'm going to show you if somebody could provide to you a map of the various people's houses at the time, and if you could verify that this is where you were living at the time.
Where I was living at the time?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, do we have a copy of these documents?
If you want one, we can get you one.
Yes, before the questions begin, so we can follow the testimony.
Okay. My staff says that we should not provide the copy.
We will provide the
Oh,
We will provide the copy.
well, speak plainly with me, please.
Oh, sure. I'd
No,
like to
not
see
you.
what she's looking at.
Yeah. Yeah, you have another 30 seconds now because I was rudely interrupted.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, Senator Harris, we do have a blown up copy of this for the members to view, if that's helpful.
Okay, I'm going to put check marks next to homes that I can confirm are the correct locations, and then an X or a question mark when I don't know where these people live,
I'm only asking you to confirm if that map accurately shows where you were living at the
where
time.
I lived at the time. So I can't see the street name, but I'm happy to refer to the address or the neighborhood.
Okay, could you tell us that?
Yes, it's River Falls,
Okay.
near the, what is the place called? The Naval Research Center on Clara Barton Parkway.
Okay, was that a house or an apartment?
It was at my parents' home.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Durbin.
Mr. Chairman, I ask consent to enter into the record letters of support for Dr. Ford from her classmates at Holton Arms School, 1,200 alumni of the school, 195 of your colleagues, students, and mentors, 1,400 women and men who attended DC schools, and 50 members of the Yale Law School faculty who are calling for a full FBI investigation. I ask consent to enter these into the record.
Without objection, so ordered.
Dr. Ford, as difficult as this experience must be, I want you to know that your courage in coming forward has given countless Americans the strength to face their own life-shattering past and to begin to heal their wounds. By example, you have brought many families into an honest and sometimes painful dialogue that should have occurred a long time ago. I'm sorry for what this has done to you and your family. No one should face harassment, death threats, and disparaging comments by cheap-shot politicians simply for telling the truth. But you and your family should know that for every scurrilous charge and every pathetic tweet, there have been thousands of Americans, women and men, who believe you, support you, and thank you for your courage. Watching your experience, it's no wonder that many sexual assault survivors hide their past and spend their lives suffering in pain silence. You had absolutely nothing to gain by bringing these facts to the Senate Judiciary Committee. The fact that you are testifying here today, terrified though you may be, the fact that you have called for an FBI investigation of this incident, the fact that you are prepared to name both Judge Kavanaugh and eyewitness Mark Judge stands in sharp contrast to the obstruction we've seen on the other side. The FBI should have investigated your charges as they did in the Anita Hill hearing, but they did not. Mark Judge should be subpoenaed from his Bethany Beach hideaway and required to testify under oath, but he has not. Judge Kavanaugh, if he truly believes there's no evidence, no witnesses that can prove your case, should be joining us in demanding a thorough FBI investigation, but he has not. Today, you come before this committee and before this nation alone. I know you're joined by counsel and family. The prosecutor on the Republican side will continue to ask questions to test your memory and veracity. After spending decades trying to forget that awful night, it's no wonder your recollection is less than perfect. A polished liar can create a seamless story, but a trauma survivor cannot be expected to remember every painful detail. That's what Senator Leahy has mentioned earlier. One question is critical. In Judge Kavanaugh's opening testimony, which we will hear after you leave, this is what he says. I never had any sexual or physical encounter of any kind with Dr. Ford. I am not questioning that Dr. Ford may have been sexually assaulted by some person in some place at some time. Last night, the Republican staff of this committee released to the media a timeline that shows that they've interviewed 2 people who claim they were the ones who actually assaulted you. I'm asking you to address this new defense of mistaken identity directly. Dr. Ford, with what degree of certainty do you believe Brett Kavanaugh assaulted you?
100%.
100%. In the letter which you sent to Senator Feinstein, you wrote, I have not knowingly seen Kavanaugh since the assault. I did see Mark Judge once at the Potomac Village Safeway, where he was extremely uncomfortable in seeing me. Would you please describe that encounter at the Safeway with Mark Judge and what led you to believe he was uncomfortable?
Yes, I was going to the Potomac Village Safeway. This is the one on the corner of Falls and River Road. And I was with my mother, and I was a teenager, so I wanted her to go in one door and me go in the other. So I chose the wrong door because the door I chose was the one where Mark Judge was, looked like he was working there and arranging the shopping carts. And I said hello to him. And his face was white and very uncomfortable saying hello back. And we had previously been friendly at the times that we saw each other over the previous 2 years, albeit not very many times. We had always been friendly with one another. I wouldn't characterize him as not friendly. He was just nervous and not really wanting to speak with me. And he looked a little bit ill.
How long did this occur after the incident?
I would estimate 6 to 8 weeks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Before we take a break, I can't let what Senator Durbin said. By the way, he's my friend. We work on a lot of legislation together. But you talked about the obstruction from the other side. I cannot let it go by what you've heard me say so many times, that between July 30th and September 13th, there were 45 days this committee could have been investigating this situation, and her privacy would have been protected. So something happened here in between on your side that the whole country, well, not the whole country should have known about it. No, not know about it. We should have investigated it. We'll take a break now for 15 minutes.
California Senator Dianne Feinstein, the ranking Democrat, and Senator Hirano of Hawaii, a Democratic member of the Senate Judiciary Committee. During this 15-minute break, we are live inside 226 of the Dirksen Senate Office Building. It's a smaller room than the Hart Building next door, where the confirmation hearings originally were held for Judge Brett Kavanaugh. As we watch this scene with two members, Democratic members of the Judiciary Committee, a reminder, we'll use this opportunity to hear from you, to get your reaction. Our phone lines are open at 202-748-8920. That's our line for Democrats, and 202-748-8921 for Republicans. If you're an independent, 202-748-8922. C-SPAN is the pool. The cameras inside that room are our cameras as we provide coverage of this hearing. And next door in the Hart Senate Office Building, supporters and opponents of Brett Kavanaugh are also gathered in the room. You also see on the screen Sheldon Whitehouse, Democratic Senator from Rhode Island. We're going to watch the scene for just a moment, get your reaction. The gavel will come back in about 12 to 15 minutes for another round of questioning to Christine Blasey Ford.
And if there's something that you want to get out and mobilize for, make it the protection of each other, the protection of our communities, the protection of our faith, and supporting rapists and their ability to hold a high honor. All right, thank you so
Members of the Senate Judiciary Committee in rooms adjoining 226 of the Dirksen Senate Office Building, and Dr. Christine Blasey Ford taking a short break during the proceedings. We'll continue live here on the C-SPAN networks and on C-SPAN Radio. A reminder, all of it available on our website at cspan.org. And from her opening statement, a portion of what Dr. Ford told the committee.
I am here today not because I want to be. I am terrified. I am here because I believe it is my civic duty to tell you what happened to me while Brett Kavanaugh and I were in high school. I have described the events publicly before. I summarized them in my letter to Ranking Member Feinstein and again in a letter to Chairman Grassley. I understand and appreciate the importance of your hearing from me directly about what happened to me and the impact that it has had on my life and on my family. I grew up in the suburbs of Washington, D.C. I attended the Holton Arms School in Bethesda, Maryland from 1978 to 1984. Holton Arms is an all-girls school that opened in 1901. During my time at the school, girls at Holton Arms frequently met and became friendly with boys from all-boys schools in the area, including the Landon School, Georgetown Prep, Gonzaga High School, as well as our country clubs and other places where kids and families socialized. This is how I met Brett Kavanaugh, the boy who sexually assaulted me. During my freshman and sophomore school years, when I was 14 and 15 years old, my group of friends intersected with Brett and his friends for a short period of time. I had been friendly with a classmate of Brett's for a short time during my freshman and sophomore year. And it was through that connection that I attended a number of parties that Brett also attended. We did not know each other well, but I knew him and he knew me. In the summer of 1982, like most summers, I spent most every day at the Columbia Country Club in Chevy Chase, Maryland, swimming and practicing diving. One evening that summer, after a day of diving at the club, I attended a small gathering at a house in the Bethesda area. There were 4 boys I remember specifically being at the house: Brett Kavanaugh, Mark Judge, a boy named PJ, and one other boy whose name I cannot recall. I also remember my friend Leland attending. I do not remember all of the details of how that gathering came together, but like many that summer, it was almost surely a spur-of-the-moment gathering. I truly wish I could be more helpful with more detailed answers to all of the questions that have and will be asked about how I got to the party and where it took place and so forth. I don't have all the answers, and I don't remember as much as I would like to. But the details about that night that bring me here today are the ones I will never forget. They have been seared into my memory and have haunted me episodically as an adult. When I got to the small gathering, people were drinking beer in a small living room, family room type area on the first floor of the house. I drank 1 beer. Brett and Mark were visibly drunk. Early in the evening, I went up a very narrow set of stairs leading from the living room to a second floor to use the restroom. When I got to the top of the stairs, I was pushed from behind into a bedroom across from the bathroom. I couldn't see who pushed me. Brett and Mark came into the bedroom and locked the door behind them. There was music playing in the bedroom. It was turned up louder by either Brett or Mark once we were in the room. I was pushed onto the bed, and Brett got on top of me. He began running his hands over my body and grinding into me. I yelled, hoping that someone downstairs might hear me, and I tried to get away from him, but his weight was heavy. Brett groped me and tried to take off my clothes. He had a hard time because he was very inebriated and because I was wearing a 1-piece bathing suit underneath my clothing. I believed he was going to rape me. I tried to yell for help. When I did, Brett put his hand over my mouth to stop me from yelling. This is what terrified me the most and has had the most lasting impact on my life. It was hard for me to breathe, and I thought that Brett was accidentally going to kill me. Both Brett and Mark were drunkenly laughing during the attack. They seemed to be having a very good time. Mark seemed ambivalent, at times urging Brett on, and at times telling him to stop. A couple of times I made eye contact with Mark and thought he might try to help me, but he did not. During this assault, Mark came over and jumped on the bed twice while Brett was on top of me. And the last time that he did this, we toppled over and Brett was no longer on top of me. I was able to get up and run out of the room. Directly across from the bedroom was a small bathroom. I ran inside the bathroom and locked the door. I waited until I heard Brett and Mark leave the bedroom, laughing, and loudly walk down the narrow stairway, pinballing off the walls on the way down. I waited, and when I did not hear them come back up the stairs, I left the bathroom, went down the same stairwell, through the living room, and left the house. I remember being on the street and feeling an enormous sense of relief that I had escaped that house and that Brett and Mark were not coming outside after me.
A portion of the opening statement by Dr. Christine Blasey Ford inside the Dirksen Senate Office Building, and we're also in the Hart Building, which adjoins the Dirksen Building, where protesters and supporters of Judge Kavanaugh have gathered. These are live view pictures. As we watch that scene, we want to get your reaction during this 15-minute break. First from Princeton, Indiana, James on the independent line. Good morning.
Good morning. How you doing?
We're fine. Your reaction to what you've heard so far?
So far, if you want the truth about it, she's lying like a dog.
Why so?
I'm not a big Trump supporter at all. By no means.
But why do you say she's lying?
Let's see. She said so much inconsistency in her statements that you could drive a Mack truck through.
So name one. What one inconsistency stands out in your mind?
She can't remember that. She can't remember. It's automatically. It's like, I wish that dang prosecutor would say, listen, I need more than 5 minutes, and I could take her to the woodshed.
We'll go to Tracy, Riverton, Wyoming, Republican line. Good morning. Your reaction to the opening round of questioning?
Oh, I think it's just horrid.
Let me stop you, Tracy. Senator Kirsten Gillibrand is speaking to reporters. Let's listen in.
The worst moments of life is extraordinary. I think her testimony is incredibly heartfelt, honest, deliberative, and effective. And I don't know how any of my Republican colleagues could, after hearing her tell her story, could not only not believe her, but could possibly vote for Brett Kavanaugh. I think this setup is outrageous. I think it's unfair. I think the fact that my Republican colleagues don't feel they can do their own job by asking those questions, I think is unfair. I think to have a prosecutor asking the question as if she's on trial is also outrageous. So I think it's set up to be a limited hearing of he said, she said, which is not designed to get to the facts or to get to the truth of the matter.
Do you find her believable?
I do. I believe her. Thank you, guys.
Senator Gillibrand and Tracy, I apologize. A lot of moving parts. We want to hear from some of the key players, but we also want to hear from you. Go ahead.
Yes, I just feel that she is very scripted. It's like she's really putting on a act. All her inconsistencies and whatnot, you can just tell she's lying.
We'll go to Brenda, Valley Park, Missouri, Democrats line.
Yes, I'm a 76-year-old woman who was sexually molested in the 2nd grade. This brings back so much pain. I thought I was over it, but it's not. You will never forget it. You get confused and you don't understand it, but you never forget what happened to you. Without my family, I would never have been able to go through this. And now I'm 76 years old, and I thought I was over it until I heard that it's happened to someone else. And it is such a shame.
Brenda, how old were you at the time?
I was in the 2nd grade. And it was a 7th grader at my school. And, you know, on rainy days, they have you march around the school back then because they couldn't let you out. And I would see him, and I would get so upset. I've had a weight problem my whole life because I was so afraid that someone was going to hurt me. And I'm married. I have a wonderful family. I have a wonderful husband and a child and great-grandchildren and grandchildren, and I thought I was over this, and I have not brought this up for years until I heard this testimony, and it is just breaking my heart.
Brenda, thank you. Thank you very much for sharing your story. We're going to go back to the Hart Senate Office Building. Senator Jeff Merkley.
Across the separation of powers, the president is supposed to nominate, the Senate is supposed to evaluate the record of the nominee. He's reached out to block with presidential privilege or executive privilege vast amounts of documents relevant to Kavanaugh's opinions, experience, and life. This, to our knowledge, has never happened before. The executive branch is not supposed to be able to compromise the role of the Senate in reviewing the record. So that is why I filed suit yesterday to say this extraordinary violation of our Constitution means that absolutely the procedure should be blocked until the Senate has full access to Kavanaugh's entire record so we can evaluate it in fulfilling our constitutional responsibility. So I hope it's on unprecedented and untested grounds, but I think it's important to call attention to this enormous violation. So I want to thank you all as being here as citizens, because really what's going on here is a battle between government by and for the powerful, the 1%, which is everything Kavanaugh represents, and government by and for the people, for the consumers, for the workers, and for the women of America. You're welcome. Thank you all for being here, bringing your feet on the street, your voices to demand fairness to the women who are bringing their experiences forward, fairness in terms of the Senate appropriately evaluating nominee Kavanaugh's background.
Senator, does Vice President Biden's statement about FBI investigations diminish your argument?
I'm not familiar with his statement.
Come on, it's been all over the news. He said FBI investigations into candidates like Judge Kavanaugh mean nothing.
I would simply have to express my own opinion, which is that when Dr. Ford says she would like the FBI to look into the details because she has nothing to hide, she's telling the authentic and true story, I think that's powerful, and I think it's been a tradition. In fact, just moments ago, as I was leaving a room, I heard Senator Leahy referring to the fact that such a follow-up background work by the FBI is standard procedure, and that standard procedure is being violated. Thank you all very much. Thank you.
So you have a sense of what it looks like inside the Hart Senate Office Building and now inside the Dirksen Senate Office Building, 226, the Senate Judiciary Committee, and by the way, Senator Merkley, Democrat of Oregon, referring to a federal injunction that he has filed to stop a final vote on the nomination of Brett Kavanaugh to serve on the U.S. Supreme Court. The short break is just about over. Christine Blasey Ford will be re-entering the room and another round of questioning. Our live coverage continues here on the C-SPAN networks.